When Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered round him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue leaders, named Jairus, came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her, so that she will be healed and live." So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed round him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, "If I just touch his clothes, I will be healed." Immediately, her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned round in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," his disciples answered, "and yet you can ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering."
Mark chapter 5, verses 21 to 34. I'm standing in the churchyard at St Mary Magdalene, South Bersted, where I'm the vicar, by the tower. This church was planted by the church in Pagham, and in the 13th century this tower was built. Apparently those buttresses were put on in the 1540s in order to strengthen it so it didn't fall down. The nave was 15th century, a rebuilt onto the old tower. The history of these buildings and the church and the Christian community here is fascinating. Here in the parish of South Bersted, I was reading that in 1536 some money was bequeathed to the Brotherhood of the Holy Rood. Apparently a rood was a cross or a pole, and there was a superstition that the original cross of Jesus had different parts that were around, still in existence, some in Scotland and some at Waltham Abbey, and it seems as though this Brotherhood of the Holy Rood here in the parish of South Bersted shared that belief. But in 1548 the property of 28 shillings was confiscated because it was thought to be for superstitious uses. I think that was about £500 or £600 worth in today's money. It is useful though to call out superstition, and of course in 1547 that was when Henry VIII died and Edward VI came to the throne, and the following year in 1549 it was when the Cranmer's first prayer book came about. So things were moving in a much more biblical and reformed direction. Quite rightly. You know, in our passage today, as well as the incident about Jairus' daughter, which we'll come back to tomorrow, Jesus heals a woman who has been suffering from bleeding. It's a very sad situation. She has spent all of her money on potential cures. She's had this illness for 12 years. It would have affected her terribly. Ceremonially, she would be unclean. So she takes a huge risk in reaching out to try and touch Jesus' cloak. She doesn't try and touch Jesus himself because that would potentially make him unclean also. Although, as we keep on seeing, the clean makes the unclean clean. Well, Jesus is completely aware of what is happening. And yet he doesn't just want this situation to go off unnoticed. And in some respects, you might think that what Jesus does is a little unkind, because he makes the woman step forward. He knows full well who it is that has touched him, but he wants her to declare that for herself. She thinks it was because she was going to touch his cloak that she would be healed. What Jesus wants to make sure that she is completely aware of is that there is no superstition. It's her faith. It's her faith in him that has made all of the difference. You know, it's so sad when today people have still so many superstitious beliefs. Jesus simply wants us to trust him. He allowed this woman to come forward so she could deal with him personally. And he wants her to know that her healing is going to be a forever kind of healing. That is what Jesus can offer us personally, in a relationship. Not superstition, but faith and trust in him. Not in a cloak, not in part of a relic of a cross, not in anything that we do, but completely in him. Father, thank you so much that you are still in the business of bringing about unclean things to be made clean, because you are clean. Thank you that you can do that for our hearts. Thank you that you did that for this woman. Thank you for your amazing compassion and love. Amen.